Royal Enfield, the brand which started building motorcycles in the 20th century. In the 1950s, they moved their production overseas to India. And in the 80s, they moved their whole production to India. At the time, they were producing only single-cylinder engines, ranging from 300 cc's to 500 cc's. Some classic models, like the Bullet, were invented at that time. The last decennium, Royal Enfield became more and more popular in India. They became the best-selling brand worldwide for the midfield class. They were even outselling the Japanese manufacturers combined. In 2018, they had a record year, selling over 800,000 motorcycles worldwide. This rise in numbers didn't come out of the blue, of course. They had to introduce something new, something different than what they were doing before. In 2001, Royal Enfield introduced a new CEO. He was very young and his name was Siddhartha Lal. He took up the challenge to make Royal Enfield a popular brand again, which it was back in the day. When he became a CEO, they were still focusing on the single-cylinder engines. But he thought they had to introduce something new, something different than what they were doing before. And so we come to this, the Royal Enfield Interceptor 650. This bike hosts the new engine they introduced, a parallel twin, making 47 horsepower, which is perfectly fine for the A2 license here in Europe. When they built this bike and designed it, they did a couple smart things. They took up this chassis builder called Harris. The brakes are made by Brembo, which is a brand called by Brembo. The suspension is made together with Öhlins. All these components together won't guarantee a winning team. So let's find out if that's true. Before we take off on our adventure, let's take a look at the seating position. The seat is nice and soft. The seating position is upright. The legs are in a nice angle. It's quite comfortable. The dash is perfectly visible. It has 2 clocks. Looks fine to me. Let's take it for a ride. Okay, let's go. Ooh. The initial response is quite nice. There is an engine light burning. Probably means nothing, right? Let's adjust these mirrors first because I have to look behind me. Okay, throttle response is quite nice. It's very friendly, I must say. As I said before, the seating is very good on this bike. It's quite upright, but still a bit forward. The legs are very comfortable. The seat is also good. It's narrow in the middle, so I think when you have some shorter legs, then it's still okay to sit on this bike. The gearbox is quite good. It's super, what do you call that? Well adjusted, I don't know. There's no gear indicator, by the way. The engine is super easy to ride. I mean, I'm doing 60 kilometers an hour right now in 6th gear. It's doing 2,500 RPM. And there's no problems with it. It's like, okay, let's do this. So riding on the highway, doing 110 at this moment. 6th gear, yes, 6th gear. That's quite nice. No problems at all. It's not nervous. I think that's because of the weight. It's not a super light bike. The mirrors are a bit strange. If you look on the right, it's a bit above my hand, and on the left, it's closer. It's a bit weird. Because of the slipper clutch, taking off on this bike is really easy to do. I mean, I got on the bike and right away I could take off without problems, without having to feel where the clutch is gripping or not. So for that, it's also very beginner friendly. You can feel that this engine got a nice RPM range, having some torque down below. You're on 100 quite fast. It's not super fast, it's quite fast. Let's see what happens when we pull the throttle, doing 100 on the highway. See how long it takes to get to 130, 140 or something. Wasn't that bad, wasn't that fast. I think it's plenty. I mean, you have to plan your overtakes a bit, maybe. I wasn't even a sixth. Oopsie. I think you have to plan your overtakes a little bit. But still, for a bike like this, which has 47 horsepower, it's nice. It's okay. Doing 100. 6th gear. It did take a while, so I think if you want to overtake somebody on the highway quickly, just drop down a gear and then you can take over. There was a significant difference in the acceleration times. But sitting on the highway, doing I think just under 110 right now, it's quite nice. I think you can do long trips on this. When you downshift, you can hear the exhaust make little popping noises, which is nice. And it's a stock exhaust. So. The suspension is also okay. It's made together with O-lins, and I think it's a quite nice suspension. I just went over some railroads. I could feel them, of course, but it wasn't annoying. Yeah, the exhaust got a nice grumble to it when you close the throttle. Yeah, you do notice that the suspension is made by a company that knows what to do with it. In a corner it's just planted. It's not bouncing around or anything. What happens when I push this button? Trip A, trip B, and the auto counter. So you have only those three options. Trip A, trip B, and a total. I really like the style of these clocks. It's really something I'm into. All these new motorcycles have these digital dashboards. I like these old analog clocks. Looks really cool. The buttons are super clicky, by the way. I just noticed it at the roundabouts, because then you have to do a lot of stuff with your turn signals. It's quite clicky. It's better than on my own bike. Okay, so I've been riding around on this bike for a while now, and I think I can give you some insights on it. How it behaves on the road, how it is to ride one. And I must say, I'm very pleased with this bike, how it behaves. The engine, like I said in the beginning of the video, has 47 horsepower. It makes about 50 Newton meters of torque. The good thing about that is that the torque is almost like a flat line during the RPM range. It doesn't matter in how many RPMs you're making, it has the same amount of torque. That also might explain why the acceleration of this bike is quite straightforward. It's very linear. It doesn't have some sweet spot on the RPM range where you should be if you want to make the most out of it. But in corners the suspension is really good. I quite like it. It's not bouncing around. It gives a lot of thrust, and I think that's very important, because this bike is focused on the beginner rider, well, or the rider who just got back into motorcycle riding. yeah, I think that's they did a really good job with that. You do notice, however, I don't think it's because of the suspension, but these tires are very narrow. I think the front one is about 11 centimeters wide and the rear one is 13. And what's common in the motorcycle industry is around 160, 180. And that means millimeters, by the way. So 16 to 18 centimeters of width. So these tires are very narrow, which has a plus side. I mean, it's very easy to change positions or stance in the corners. But I think because of the tires, you also feel the small details in the road a bit better. I don't think that's a bad thing. It's always nice to feel what's happening underneath you. It's better than riding on a flying carpet. Oh, nip. Yeah, this bike is very pleasant to ride. It's relaxing. You don't get pushed to make speed or whatever. You can. I mean, I can throttle out this corner with ease. But the bike doesn't ask that from you. He doesn't want that per se. He's fine with just cruising along and having fun. In Dutch there's a word for what this bike stands for, which is onthaasten. And onthaasten means, you know, it's not haste. It's difficult to explain. During life, everybody's in a hurry. They want to go somewhere fast. They're speeding everywhere on the road. And this bike does the opposite. He wants you to slow down and take it cool and easy. It's yeah, I really like it, this style of riding. And don't get me wrong, this bike too has some fun in it. But it's not that, it's not really that much in there compared to other motorcycles. I think it's also that this bike is really suited for the audience it's targeting for. I mean, this bike is targeted for the beginners, the people who just got back on the bike, older people. I say it slowly, but it is a bit, because it's an old brand. Especially the old folks know it from back in the days. I mean, I had a chat with somebody a couple days earlier that I said, hey, I'm going to ride a Royal Enfield. He said, oh yeah, I know somebody that has one. And I asked him, yeah, what bike does he has? Yeah, it's this bike, it's from 1976, and the gearing is upside down and the brake is on the right side, no, left side. And I said, did you know that Royal Enfield is making new bikes these days with new components? No, I didn't know that. So people are not even aware of the current status of Royal Enfield, outside of India, by the way, because like I said in the beginning, they sold a lot of these motorcycles in India, over 800,000 in 2018. Last year they did over 700,000. Those are immense numbers. And I think that they did a good job with that, to focus this bike on the what you call it, the general audience. Hello. They wanted this bike to be perfect for anybody riding a motorcycle. Anybody could ride this motorcycle, I think. Oh, I wanted to honk my horn. Anybody could ride this motorcycle, and I think especially in India, where I suppose you don't need that much stuff to do if you want to get your license. You don't want people to ride on a bike that goes 2-3 seconds to 100 and that kind of stuff. You also don't need it. I mean, the cities in India are so crowded. This kind of bikes are perfect for it. But also if you're a beginner and this bike, and you're liking the style, because there are other bikes that look like this. I mean, stuff like the Triumph. What is that guy doing? Okay. Bikes like the Triumph Street Twin,
which is about the same comparing to this one. It has a bigger engine, it makes a bit more horsepower, but the styling is a bit the same. You have the Kawasaki W800, which also again looks the same as this one, has an air-cooled parallel twin. The Kawasaki is 800 cc's, this one has 650, so that's the difference. But the Kawasaki as well makes 47 horsepower, I suppose, I think. So those bikes are really comparable to this one, but they're way more expensive. This bike is, for example, just under 8,000 euros. I think it was 8,700, something like that. And the Street Twin, if I'm correct, is just shy of 10k in euros. I think it was maybe a bit over 10k. Yeah, it was over. It was like 10.5k. So that's a lot of money for a motorcycle that's almost the same as this one. Yes, it has probably better build quality because it's a Triumph, it's European. But it doesn't have, I think, maybe it does, brakes by Brembo. It doesn't have braided wires for the brakes. These are steel braided. And you pay a lot more. You pay maybe 3,000 euros more for a bike that's basically the same as this one. And the Kawasaki W800 is over 8,000 euros, I think. I think it was 8.5 or 9. So that one is quite close to this one. But it's Japanese, it has history, of course, but nothing can beat Royal Enfield in the history class. I mean, I think it was the first brand worldwide that made motorcycles, even before Harley Davidson started. So don't try to battle Royal Enfield on heritage. But those bikes are really comparable. It's Japanese against English, British, Indian bike. So there must be some differences. But these bikes are made with love, they say. Apparently, if you take some color scheme with lines on it, those are done by hand. The whole paint job is by hand. The initials of the guy who painted this tank are somewhere below the seat. They put a lot of love in these bikes. And you can see that. It's just, when you look at it, there's always stuff to see anywhere. Yeah, you can see they really did their best on this to make a proper motorcycle. I do have some remarks though. I think the exhausts are way too big. They are these huge bazookas on the end. They make a nice tone, that's fine. But if you look at the Street Twin, those are the same style of exhaust, but those are way more slim. And they make such a nice noise as well. So Royal Enfield could have done that a bit better. And I think when they would have put some slimmer exhausts on there, it's also saved some weight, because this bike is not really light, it's not heavy, but it's not really lightweight either. But yeah, that's something I would say, like, hey, maybe you could do something about it. Let's see. The computer has only 2 trip meters and an auto counter. That's also not that much. I mean, most of the bikes nowadays have at least a clock or a gear indicator, or maybe something else like a, what do you call it, fuel consumption meter. That would have been nice. They have some space left on the right or left to put it in there, but they didn't. That would have been a nice touch. But this bike is, besides those points, quite complete. I have no idea about how it will do in the long term, because I only ride it today to test for you. But it already comes with a center stand, so you can put the bike straight up, and you can easily maintain your chain or whatever. So that's really nice. The mirrors work quite well. It's still weird that they're off-center, like this one is higher than the left one, but they do work quite well. The brakes are pretty good. I mean, it does the job, as long as you're not racing or anything, slamming the brakes, they do work. So I just had some more gas in the bike, even though I borrowed it, I had to fill her up again. But then I noticed this tank cap, which is really nice. It looks really cool. It's different than what the Japanese bikes have. Yeah, I like the effort they put in it to make the bike has its own style. The aspect ratio of the gearbox is quite short. What do you call that? The transitions or whatever. You can upshift quite early. I think you can even do, yeah, I'm now in 6th, 60 in 6th. It's perfectly fine. And I think they did that because, again, in India, it's you cannot go that fast in the cities over there, in the big urban cities. So then you still can do some shifting, I guess. And it's easier, of course. I mean, you have to maneuver a lot there, go between the cars and other bikes. And then it's easier if you have short gear ratios. That was it called, gear ratio. By the way, I'm 6 foot tall and I sit perfect on this bike. I can flat-foot it at a traffic light when standing still. My legs are in a very comfortable position. My butt isn't hurting. Yeah, it's made for Europeans, let's call it that way. It's not made for especially small people. It's also not made for big people. I think it's all around good sizing position. Let's do a quick 0 to 100 over here on the straight road. So I know beforehand that this bike isn't fast, but let's see how fast it isn't. The takeoff was so slow. I could do better. Okay, one more time to really set the mark. That wasn't that bad. I didn't hit the rev limiter just yet. But yeah, you don't buy this bike for its speed. You buy it for the relaxed riding. Or if you're a beginner, for the very beginner-friendly way of handling this bike. Because the engine combined with the slipper clutch, it's so friendly to ride this. Anybody can ride this bike, seriously. And the slipper clutch also helps tremendously in traffic. I just noticed that while I was riding in the city, and you really can see the benefit of it. And I think it has plenty of power. I mean, without thinking about it, in no time I'm doing over 60. Yeah, of course it's fun to really pull the throttle on the bike. But then buy a fast bike, don't buy this retro bike. I mean, you buy this because you like the style. Or the heritage or whatever. Okay, final verdict for the Royal Enfield Interceptor 650. I think it's a cool bike. It's a really good effort of Royal Enfield to build a proper motorcycle with high components, high quality, because like I said, framed by Harris, a renowned frame builder, the brakes by Brembo, steel braided braking wires, cables, what do you call it, hoses, the suspension made together with O-lins. They really did their best to make a good quality, high standard bike. I think they did a good job about it. Yeah, the styling is also something you must like. I mean, some people won't like it, it's fine. But I think a lot of people who are looking for a retro looking bike don't want to spend that much money on a new bike, like for the W800 or the Street Twin. Then the Royal Enfield is, I think, the next best thing. I mean, it does the same thing, it works, it looks cool, it rides like fun. Let's see, I have to go over here. Like so. yeah, I've had a blast riding it. It's been really good fun. It's also fuel economy wise, I think quite okay. Like the mileage, what do you call it? I have no idea what it is. I will look it up and show it somewhere in the screen. Yeah, it's a really fun bike. It's a super friendly bike for a beginner because of the slipper clutch and the way the throttle responds. It's still by cables, yep. So no throttle by wires or no ride modes or whatever, but you don't need it. I mean, this is riding a motorcycle just for riding a motorcycle, nothing else. If you want all the modes and such, then you have to spend a lot more money. And for what you pay for this bike, you get a lot of bike. It's really cool motorcycle. So I enjoyed this. If you did too, watching this video, let me know what you think of this motorcycle. Is it something you like? Should I go back to the store and find some more information for you or whatever? Let me know in the comments down below. If you want to see more videos, like, small spoiler alert, I'm going to test the other Royal Enfield bikes as well, like the Himalayan 400 and the Bullet 500, the classic one. If you want to see those videos, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, because then you'll get a notice when I have the new video up. And of course a lot of other videos, because I tend to ride way more motorcycles than just Royal Enfields. Yeah, so subscribe to my channel, of course. And that's it for now. I hope you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.